Welcome once again to another edition of Rural Ruminations. And we're here with David and Sonia Johnson at Shepherd Valley in rural Glencoe near Arcadia. And we're going to learn a little bit today about the sheep business.
Yes, we are.
Well, we're glad to have you here, and we hope that people appreciate what we're doing and also appreciate the sheep and the care of the land and very many other things that go on here.
Hello, I'm Bernard Zigwide, and we welcome you to this edition of Rural Ruminations. This is Trempealeau County Cable TV, and over the course of the next few months, we're going to be taking you around to visit some of the roads and places and farms, and mostly the people who make this area the special place that it is.
We're gonna move this flock of sheep. There's about 200 and how many are? Let's see. How about 250? About 250, and with ewes and lambs. And one of the problems with this is that most of the lambs will follow just fine, but there's a few stragglers that always give you trouble. And we'll see how it goes, because right here in the early season, this is what our challenge is, to train the lambs so that they'll follow. And most of them will, but some of them might not. But we'll see how it goes.
Well, I'm kind of an old straggler myself, so, they might identify with me.
That's right.
Or me with them.
So if you straggle at the end, maybe you'll bring them up. That's good.
That could be. A poor little lamb that's lost his way.
Yeah, so we're going to bring them down off the hill, way up here. We're going to bring them down here, bring them in this area. And then once we get them in here, then we'll redirect them, and they're going to go to that green pasture over there. So
it's going to be a kinder, gentler version of Marlboro country.
Yes, I suppose. We won't move them out of here for a few days. They'll eat here because they'll be able to eat here for a while. But otherwise, once we get the whole flock together and we're basically completed with lambing, we'll move them every day. And by moving them every day, the grass is going to grow back and it's going to rest, and so they're going to be able to have fresh grass all the time. And so every day.
The lambs will move easier then too.
Sure.
So the more we move them, the better they get.
They learn the ropes.
That's what's difficult is I know my own know me.
Yeah.
And last year we had a real oddity. We had two surrogate mothers. One had lost her lamb, and she actually adopted two for us, and one was even several days old. That is just never heard of, never.
Wow.
And the other one took another one too. So and they raised them until we sold them in August. So
That's wonderful.
it was very, very nice. Less orphans, which I have none right now, and I like it that way.
We had nine sets of triplets last year. We haven't counted them up this year, but I think we're in the 15 to 20 for triplets. But we always take one of the triplets away and sell it as an orphan, because we just found that most mothers, about 20% of the mothers can actually raise triplets.
Yep.
And then the rest of them end up to be dead or orphans. So we just take them almost right away.
Sure.
And it just works out much better. You start feeding 15, 20 orphans every day a bottle, that's a lot of work.
Yes.
And besides
And a
all the
lot of
other
time.
besides all the other things that have to do with lambing. So Long and the short is we had moved to Arizona, and I was working in hospice there. And we had a head dairy farm in northeast Iowa, and I guess we thought we were too much on vacation in Arizona. We did stay there for almost 3 years. And but I started looking in Hoard's Dairyman for places to buy, and so we came up here over Memorial Weekend, and I had called way early in like February, and Dick Krakow had 5 farms, and he said, well, I've sold a couple and there may not be any left when you get here. And I said, well, I'll call ahead of time. And so we did, and he said he had 2 left, but he said one he was going to close the day we were coming. So this was the farm, and I had some 7 criteria that I wanted to meet, and I never thought I would meet them all, but they all met the criteria here. And so we ended up by putting a down payment on the farm and bought the farm. And we didn't get the house to start with. Paul Kunkel was living in the house, and Juanita, and we did get them in the summer of '96. We just bought this farm in '94, and so it was a matter of transforming it into a different operation and a different kind of farm. And we'd considered, but very briefly, about dairy, but not very, very, very briefly. And even milking sheep, but that was just as brief. And when I grew up outside of Minneapolis, my dad had about a dozen sheep, and I was real young. I think he sold them when I was 5 or 6. So that's, I guess, if there's a subconscious or some kind of a connection or association, maybe that's it. But so
you're saying that you can go home again?
Yeah, that's right. I guess so. So we bought we bought 100 ewes down in southern Wisconsin from a guy named Peter Wood, who has since passed away, and we brought him here and learned a lot. Having dairy cattle, learned a lot, was important, but we learned a lot about sheep too in the first couple of years. You know how that goes. Mm-hmm. And of course, when you start out on something new, it doesn't go according to plan. There's always it seems like more trouble than if you'd had than years past. But so then I was, as you know, I'm a Lutheran minister, and so I was doing some supply preaching around in the various churches, and had made a connection with a congregation up by Northfield, and so I spent 18 years there, and just retired last June. And so we are on the farm and staying here and doing some traveling, and that's kind of what we're doing right now. So
you were a shepherd of that other flock for almost as long as you were a shepherd of this flock.
That's right. I get a comment now and then on my answering machine that I have. This is the shepherd of 2-leggeds and 4-leggeds, and so that's the case. I don't do too much with 2-leggeds anymore, and the question I always get asked is it easier to do 4-leggeds or 2-leggeds? And I don't even have to answer. Almost everybody says, you mean 4-leggeds. Animals are easier than people. So
and they mostly are.
Yeah.
With notable exceptions.
Yeah, you have to think about there's downsides on everything and upsides too. So that's good. Yeah. So we've pretty much kind of reconfigured the farm here and made it into a sheep farm, kind of looking for somebody that would be interested in taking it over, but we haven't been so fortunate yet to find that person or couple or family or whatever, but we'll see. I don't know, because we're looking to back out more and more, but we actually are probably down about 100 ewes from our high point right now this year, so we were up to 253 or something at one time. Mm-hmm. So this year we're, with our ewe lambs, which is the first year sheep, the first year females, we were down to about 155 here when we went into lambing. So,
well, I do remember when you moved in here and took over, and the place looks markedly different now, and so maybe you'd like to share a little of your history of development and renovation over the years.
Well, I've completely renovated the barn. The barn was the sheep barn was nearly collapsing on the inside. It seemed to be good on the outside, but on the inside, and so end up with jack and timbers and so forth, and did that. And this lean-to here that's on the south side of the sheep barn is that was most of the lumber that came out of a dilapidated shed that was over here, and then we put in the barnyard here about 11 years ago, and so we have some good concrete that really works nice in this time of year. And the house, I've completely renovated the house, from everything from electricity to plumbing, and as well as added on another garage and a porch and a few other things, and really completely redone it on the inside as well as the outside, and landscaped. And over here on the creek, this used to be a gully about 4 or 5 feet deep, and we cleared all the trees out and had a bulldozer come, and we re-landscaped it, and took a little bit of a hit last summer when we had that heavy rain, but for the most part it's held up pretty well. And created another little pasture here for these, what we call specials. They're little the sheep, the lambs are smaller, and sometimes the mother's a little questionable, and so we can they're not with the big flock, and it's not as confusing. But so we've created another pasture area here, and same with back over here. We have a pond on the other side of that berm, and that too was a washed out gully about 4 or 5 feet deep with nothing but bull thistles, and came in there, made a pond, and cleared that all out, and got another pasture.
So do sheep relatively willingly come downhill?
They do, although they'll come up okay, but it's, you can, you get them going, they start running downhill. So they're just like people, you move faster downhill than you do uphill.
Well, that part is true, but, as much as I deal with cattle, they seem to move a lot easier taking them uphill than taking them downhill.
Well, no, I can't say. I'd say downhill is easier, but they're okay, depending upon how it is. Mm-hmm. I mean, if we reversed the process we did out there today and sent them into the pasture we took them out of and took them off of that alley, well, they'll go right up that hill. They'll go right there, and they'll just spread out. And, they're fit. They're in good shape. They're not like human beings that are always looking for the easy way out always. So, but they also know where the grass is too. So they know that there's a reward in there. So that helps.
They're definitely not totally stupid.
No, they aren't. They aren't. I call sheep connoisseurs of grass or forage, and they know, and they can pick out and so forth. One of the things that I guess is a little bit of an aside here is I had bought some alfalfa hay to start with, because we feed little square bales in the pens when they're lambing, and boy, we were hauling out stems after stems, whole piles of stems all the time. Well, they didn't care for the stems. They ate all the flowers and all the leaves, but they didn't care for the stems. But you put a bale of grass hay in there, they basically eat the whole thing. But if it comes to stemmy stuff, so they know what is good for them, and they know what's the good feed. So they know more, in some sense, more than we know, I think, at times.
I believe that to be true.
So yeah. And I've even heard that amongst, even with, and I'm not so sure about milking dairy cattle, but heifers and steers, that, some grass in there is, they really go after the grass. And, of course, when we graze, that's what they want, is the grass. In fact, they don't eat clover. They'll eat the grass before they'll eat clover. And
well, I do think it tends to be true that the alfalfa stems are probably much more bitter than the grass is.
Yeah, and it's the stalk. There's not the nutrients aren't there. It's in the leaves and if there's blossoms even. But in alfalfa, if it's a chop feed, then then it's a whole different story. But if it's a dry hay, then I think it's much better. And sheep know. And it's just like they know where they've been, the pastures. They know some of these older ones now, they've been around the farm so long, and they know where the gates are, and they know what's coming up, and they've got a routine, that that they know about, and so they know what to do to survive and to have a life that I guess what I would say fits a sheep.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I guess often we want to humanize some of these aspects of sheep, and they don't. I had an interesting thing this morning. We had to move a ewe out of the front yard. That we weren't sure about the lambs. One lamb wasn't maybe doing so well. Well, I picked them up, and we had 4/10 of an inch of rain last night. I picked them up, and everybody thinks, oh, it's soggy, it's awful out there. Well, it was probably at midnight, but at 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock this morning, those lambs were as dry as can be.
Mm-hmm.
They know how to get along. They have the natural ability and natural coat and so forth to get along, and they all did well. So even the other night, we never really had hail before with sheep this young, and with lambs, and wondered how they do. Well, they all found cover somewhere, and there isn't a lot, but along fence lines or under the mother or something, or out of the wind or laying down in the ground, and they, I thought, well, we got some quarter-size hail now. I thought that enough to maybe knock one out or something, but it didn't. So
This is good.
yeah. So they know how to survive.
It's been a delightful and most interesting conversation with David and Sonia Johnson, and we've learned a whole lot about sheep, or at least I know that I have, and also some good lessons in life.
Okay, well, it's, on the farm you learn about living and dying, about conservation, and a whole variety of other things that pertain to life, and I guess to some of the simplicities of life as well as the wholesomeness of life. So I think that's, that's one reason why I like living out here, I guess.
Lambing is different every year. You learn something different all the time. What can I say? We used to have little scraggly lambs when we started, and now we have big bruisers. We had a 13-pound lamb today. So.
Well, isn't there a book in the Bible called Lamentations?
Yeah, but that's lamenting.
Anyway, it's been lovely, and we'll, I'm sure, down the line see the Johnsons and see you again as well for another section of Rural Ruminations.
Let's head on in and meet and greet the staff. Good morning to you. Good morning. Good morning. And they all keep working. Such a wonderful staff. So thank you. So we have Alexis Bisick, Susie Tweet, we have Greg, we have Tom, we have Marisa Boda, who's not here, we have Annette Pranjinsky, we have Mark Larson, who works with our Ricardo, Nathaniel Aldrich, Connor and Del Coquette, who are part of our summer staff. We have Sam, all sorts of wonderful people. It takes.
And it started with in the Trap Shack with Kathy Corson, who is a classmate and a neighbor and a friend for many, many years. And she was kind enough to come into our showroom and start helping out with the shipping. And she has been kind of with us through that growth and development. And part of that growth and development is for me to say, oh, yes, there are so many wonderful people and there are so many patient people. And like Sue had referenced before, they do it so much better than what I can. And we're just so fortunate for the people that we have with us. We've been really, really blessed.
So over here, I'm also going to show you, you had asked about the craft wool, that sort of thing. So everything that we have is going to have, I go through, I do a lot of photos. You can check out our photos on Flowing River Farm on Facebook or on Trap Shack Company. Alexis and Greg keep up with that very well. We've turned a lot of that over. But this would be what would be packaged and sent for people. They maybe want to use this for their Santa beards and that. This, we have 4 different qualities of wool. And typically by September, we've been sold out, and we kept increasing on sheep numbers and keeping more back, and have done a lot of lot improvements to be able to keep up with that, and also for the beef cattle. And this would be a small bag of the organic straw. This is the 13-ounce straw, and we also have 3-pound bags of straw.
Or we send it by bales too.
Yes, we,
Full bales and send them.
for that. And otherwise, we have our 2 stations set up for doing some of the packaging. So you can look and see what a typical station looks like right here, doing some sorting and some packaging right now. But everything that gets shipped out, we have the 2 workstations. They are so good, so wonderful. So it might be 10 big boxes get shipped to Amazon a day, and Amazon has how many warehouses throughout the United States? And then it gets shipped there, and then they pull it, and then they ship it somewhere else. So it's a huge, big process, and it's a huge learning curve, and Tom is excellent, and the staff is excellent at keeping track of inventory, because it does things in the world of Amazon. They do what we call, they do run, meaning all of a sudden it clicks, it gets higher to the ranking order, and then your product goes, and you move up, and then that goes, and then maybe somebody else comes in and gets the buy box, and then what you think is going to be a really good item to be selling isn't that far up, but now you have all that inventory. So it does end up being a fair bit of inventory management, and Tom has his finger on that pulse. And yes, there are over 700 items on Trap Shack for him to keep track of. And Flowing River, where are we at? Probably 100. And then with all of our vet products. So it does end up being a lot of inventory management, and he does a fine job.
So presently we are in what's known as the loft, which is also called the urine station. So we sell a lot of animal urine, primarily fox and coyote urine, and the reason that that is sold, it is an animal attractant. So if you're trapping fox or coyote or predators, it can be used as a suspicion remover, and so it's used at the sets. But more commonly, what it's being used for now is as something to deter small critters. And so we sell a lot to urban areas, New York City, New Jersey, LA, and what people are interested in getting the urines for is to put around their ornamental shrubs, to put around their gardens, their fruit trees, that type of thing, so critters such as mice and rabbits and deer don't come and eat on them. That has provided a lot of opportunity to visit with some very fine folks in the urban area, and to tell them about how they can control their little critters. And as we were talking during break, it is a nice way to be able to connect a trapper with people that are in an urban area that would either have no opinion about trapping or possibly have a negative opinion about the trapping industry. The Ziegweed family likes puns, I believe, and one that has come to mind for me right now with the light of the urine is that one of the possible things we could say about Trap Shack is you're in good hands with Trap Shack.
That's fully as bad as most Ziegweid puns.
Thank you.
So this is part of the Flowing River Farm, what we refer to as the packing shed. So this would be the area where our grain is cleaned, and Tom is going to mention how that process is done right here.
So what we have here is a Clipper grain cleaner. This is a company that's been in business for years and years and years, and you see many of the old models in old granaries around the country go to auction.
Clipper fanning mills.
Clipper fanning mills, that's exactly right. So they've upgraded them, and we purchased a new cleaner to do our corn, primarily for our corn. And when we are preparing our corn for sale, again for Amazon or on the website, then we run it through this machine twice. And this has screens, it vibrates and that type of thing to get small kernels out, to get overly large pieces of debris out, and to clean it. After that, then our staff goes through and they actually hand pick out imperfections in it. So this would be an example of our corn that is packaged that's ready to sell. This is in a 6-pound package. In order for us to sell the corn, then we want to maintain quality control. So it is tested for the different mycotoxins each year. There's an analysis for each variety and batch of corn that we package to comply with. We want to be proactive to make sure that we're putting out a good product, and that's visually appealing. So the labels get approved by MOSA, which is our certifying agency for the organics, so that everything is in compliance with that. And these then get boxed up, shipped out to the Amazon warehouses.
So for an old layman like me that is probably better suited to the terms of the 1950s and 60s, the bushel weight standard for shelled corn for many years has been 56 pounds.
Correct.
And typically when you have a very high quality product like yours that's been carefully cleaned and screened, do you do a bushel weight on yours, or do you know what it might be?
Yeah, yes, we do. The minimum that we're sending out is 58 pound, and if we have corn that qualifies as what is considered food grade, we've had it as high as 63% or 63 pounds for test weight with it.
That's a very nice number.
It is, yeah.
So this is a snippet of the packing shed for Flowing River Farm. Thank you so very much for the opportunity to share, because that's what we enjoy doing.
Thank you.
It's been most interesting visiting with Sue and Tom Ruskus, their sons Greg and Hawken. Marvelous day and a whole marvelous new world of things I was totally unaware of.